Why do so many dogs die before their time? Actress and dog activist Katherine Heigl, who's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her foundation, says she's seeing more issues with dogs' joints, odors, and health than ever before. And after doing a ton of research, she feels there's one place we can look to support any dog's health: their food. So she decided to create something she could actually feel good about feeding her dogs. Superfood Complete by Badlands Ranch is made with over 30 of the healthiest ingredients on the planet, including premium protein-packed beef, nutrient-dense organ meat, heart-healthy salmon, gut-healthy vegetables, and several superfoods vital to your dog's health. And because high-heat cooking can add unhealthy things to your dog's food, Superfood Complete uses air drying, so it gets cooked low and slow. This means it has the convenience of kibble, but the health benefits of whole foods. If you want your dog to experience all these incredible benefits, go to badlandsranch.com/save50 right now to get up to 50% off your order and a 90-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's BADLANDS ranch.com/save50 today. All dogs are unique. Your dog's results can and will vary.
Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Uber Direct helps you give your customers what they want when they want it. Offer them delivery options in under 2 hours, on the same day, or scheduled up to 30 days in advance. Plus, share real-time tracking and ETAs by text. You can keep growing your business at a price that works for you. Never pay commission or hidden charges. Just pay a fixed fee per delivery. Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.
Spending some time reconnecting with nature this summer? Here's a camping hack from LL Bean to make your next trip the best yet. When putting together your gear, wrap a piece of duct tape around your water bottle. It's barely noticeable, but if another piece of gear breaks or tears, pull off your tape to make a quick patch or repair. For more camping hacks, visit youtube.com/LLbean. LL Bean. Be an outsider.
Write that down for me, Saito. Write that down for me, Saito.
All right, hi everyone, welcome back. It's Write That Down. I'm Justin Knipper. I edit for FightGameMedia.com. I'm a staff writer over at F4W Online Wrestling Observer.com. And I'm back with Japan's leading pro wrestling author, historian, sociologist, broadcast journalist, all-around wonderful person, Mr. Fumi Saito. Okay, today we have a special episode for you, and it's focused on Vince McMahon and his family's deep connections to the Japanese wrestling scene dating back, more than 50 years. Fumi and I spent time talking about Giant Baba's first trip to Madison Square Garden. We talked about Vince McMahon, his junior complex. We talked about Vince McMahon Sr.'s time in Japan, showing up for New Japan. We talked about Antonio Inoki versus Bob Backlund in Tokushima for the infamous WWF World Heavyweight title match. We talked a lot about Hulk Hogan in Japan, how important that relationship was, and how it led to the end of the New Japan WWF relationship in the 80s. And we also had to talk about the WWF All Japan New Japan Wrestling Summit in 1990, as well as a little after that when WWE finally carved their niche out on Japanese cable television. Yeah, exciting, topical. Let's get into it. But before that, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Fight Game Media Network podcast feed. It's on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Downcast, wherever you usually listen to your podcast. Please do so if you haven't already. It helps us out a ton. And by the way, I have a book out on Amazon called Stronger Than All. It covers all the New Japan Strong matches of the first 2 years of the show. And it's on Amazon Kindle. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Check it out. All right, let's jump right in to Write That Down, our Vince McMahon in Japan special.
Right, but it's been the big news that Vince McMahon retired, and it
Huge
was on
news.
Twitter. Yeah, it was on Twitter first. The Friday afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like 7-8 hours before Friday Night SmackDown that night. And sure enough, that night of the Friday Night SmackDown, Stephanie McMahon opened the show with her announcement: "My father retired today," and and it's been it's a big news, big news. But for the past how many months? Like 6 months, this sex scandal thing and other things that it's been a big news in the States, but the Japanese media hasn't really covered that as much as they did in the States. You know what I'm saying?
It's I mean, sometimes there are stories that are bigger or more highly valued in the States than in Japan, and vice versa. You know what I mean?
Vice versa. Yep.
I remember, this is off tangent a little bit, but when I was still living in Japan, I remember there was a guy, I think it was in was it Yokohama or something, or Kanazawa area? He was in a retirement home, and he ended up stabbing a lot of old people.
Oh, old people and challenged people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in the West, it was huge news. I had people like texting me. It's like, "Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay? Are you there?" I mean, I was far away from it. I was.
Yeah. Are you okay?
Because I was hours and hours away from this, but it was a huge story over in the West. But I saw hardly anything in Japanese media about it, because it was also the month that Pokemon Go was at the absolute craze.
It was big news, though. I followed it.
It was big, but people were not talking about that, or I'm not talking about the people, but the media. It was treated like a smaller story. It felt like, compared to how people in the West were
right,
telling, because it's a little sensationalized.
I'm not so proud of that, because it was a big issue. That it's not just one crazy guy stabbing a whole bunch of people, but it was the issue that challenged people, handicapped people, and that the old useless citizen can be eliminated. Like such Nazi, type of, philosophy behind it. It was it was sickening. Yes.
Mm-hmm. It was just, I bring it up just because sometimes in the West and in Japan, sometimes we have the same story and it's projected differently, or it's
right. The same thing, but way back in 1994, that Vince McMahon did for steroid trial.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Every day, for the 2-week trial, every day that they covered news, who was on the witness or who took a stand, and then it was not as big in Japan at the time. The Vince McMahon wasn't as famous back in 1994 in Japan. I'm talking about, yeah. So
right.
We covered it in Wrestling Magazine, but not too many, the mainstream news covered it. It was American wrestling promoter indicted to steroid distribution and all these things, and the FBI and but
I think
it wasn't covered as much.
Yeah, there are stories over here that, I mean, you not only have to report the action of what happened, but there's a lot of different context, like steroid law and use of steroids in the States versus in Japan. You have to explain a lot of different background.
Right. Oh, definitely. Most definitely.
So I think sometimes if there's so much explaining that must be done in an article that's going to come out,
start reading a story or knowing about the story, people are just it.
Yeah, they're going to simply check out. It's not. If you're just a regular Japanese person, it's just not that. Sometimes it's not worth it to investigate all of this info unless you are already very interested in it. I think sometimes these stories, you can't explain it in a minute.
Oh no, not at all.
And sometimes stories from the West get lost because ultimately they're not that important to the big picture. Ultimately, Abe was just shot. I mean, I think there are different things on people's minds in Japan right now than Vince McMahon's sex life. So I think a lot of people will probably see it just like over here and go, "Oh, that's just a part of the show." Especially if you're a casual.
Oh,
fan.
even some wrestling fans still think it's a big angle that Vince McMahon retired or resigned, or that he still be producing show. Right? It's like no, he's not. But yes. But this is our role to share what we know. And there were a big relationship between Japanese wrestling industry and McMahon family. Goes all the way back to 1962 or 1962, because 1962 meaning that the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, WWWF, don't even start until 1963. And Giant Baba toured New York and had a important single match against people like Argentina Rocca or young Bruno Sammartino at Madison Square Garden in 1962. And it was a year before that foundation of WWWF. Yeah.
So you could see the roots of the company today, they're tied to Japan still, even to the McMahons, even back then.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And there was a comic book series, Giant Typhoon, that I read as a kid, that they had Vince McMahon in it, but they didn't probably have the photo of Vince McMahon Sr. So what happened? What was on Giant Typhoon comic book series? It doesn't even look like Vince McMahon. He's a bald-headed guy from New York. So,
just an imagination of what he might look like.
It looks like a Toots Mondt, more like. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Toots Mondt is technically, he's. It's not WWWF, but it was the roots of the Capital Sports and what became
exactly
WWF.
Right. And at the time, Vincent James McMahon, the McMahon Sr., was the promoter from Washington, D.C. and Madison Square Garden. Yeah.
So I guess with if people aren't familiar with Vince Sr., how would you compare him to Vince McMahon of today? I mean, what were the big differences, would you say, coming between those two?
For the older generations of Japanese wrestling fans, when you say McMahon, it means Vince McMahon Sr.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, like for the longest time, until all the way to like almost 90s, that this Vince we know, the Vincent Kennedy McMahon, was always referred as Vince McMahon Jr. in Japan.
Which apparently he hated.
Oh, God, he hated it. Oh, of course.
That's why there are no juniors in WWE. That's why there's no Rey Mysterio Jr.
Mysterio was junior, but they took that. Or Ted DiBiase should have been Ted DiBiase Jr., right?
Sure.
The younger DiBiase. Or Cowboy Bob Orton. It's Bob Orton Jr. in Japan, always. But they took that often. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he hated the word itself, the junior.
I think
that's almost like a stigma.
You told me that even Motoko Baba would refer to him as Junior up until...
because they met, Jan Baba and Mrs. Baba, Motoko Baba met this Vincent Kennedy McMahon when he was 19 at Madison Square Garden. 19-year-old Vince running around the backstage of Madison Square Garden with his bow tie on. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the people of power in Japan have a very specific image of Vince as a son.
For the older generation of fans, but for the different generation of Japanese fans who started watching WWE from, let's say, like Attitude Eras, Stone Cold and Rock, and the Triple H era, that it was like just complete another television show that they got, the whole new generation of Japanese wrestling fan hooked, really hooked. Wow, this is a great show, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was Monday Night War era. And one of the satellite channel had Monday Nitro, and another channel had Monday Night Raw. So it was like a small portion of Monday Night War going in Japanese TV industry too. And it was a time when the cable TV was never that big over here. Probably like a landscape. That it's more like a satellite dish era, like a late 90s. That I have little satellite dish outside my like a balcony too, but when Sky Perfect TV, the CS channel, CS is like a communication satellite that you have to buy tuner and satellite dish for your home to hook up with Sky Perfect TV, and they give you 300 channels or something. Those 300 channel was sports channel that they had WWE package in it, and they pretty much, were able to gain the whole new generation of, Japanese wrestling fans. Even the fans that don't follow local Japanese wrestling, they still started watching WWF programming in Japan with subtitles, just like movies. Is this wrestling or is this kind of skit? It was a whole new.
It seems like the current fan base too. It treats it almost like you said, like it's it's wrestling, but it's almost like if
Soap opera.
or if like Cirque du Soleil came to town. It's this international show, live entertainment show from, it's looked at as a show from America, and they're going to do a specific thing. And I noticed at a lot of the Yogoku shows that WWE used to have, there would be so many WWE cosplayers, people dressed up like their favorites.
They are WWE fans.
Yeah. So
some of them don't even follow the local wrestling. Yeah,
right. It's just like separate genre.
Yes, separate genre, or like they're more like the Universal Studio fan or Disney World fan.
Yeah, it's like it's treated like another IP, like an intellectual property, like the Avengers or I don't know, something like
Silk Soleil.
Yeah, or like Harlem Globetrotters or something.
Yeah. So it was like that. But then again, they had their own audience, so that's their success in Japan.
It's true. That's pretty. I mean, thinking about
the hardcore fans, of course, hardcore fan base always watch everything, from New Japan to Old Japan to UWF style to FMW deathmatch style to women's wrestling to then you have American wrestling. Oh my God, And
I think what it showed is how deep the market for pro wrestling is in Japan, and it was
in Japan
because
culture.
They didn't have to. They didn't have to eat into the current Japanese market. It seemed like WWE was able to borrow a little bit from the current market, but they kind of created their own micro market within Japan. So
yeah, they did though. Yeah, and also 2002 on that they had the Japan tour every year, sometimes twice, Raw tour and SmackDown tour, or the Super Show tour. And 2002 every year, all the way till 2019. Until this COVID pandemic. Yeah, they haven't been here 3 years now. But they had their own market, kind of like some rock concert that comes every year. Like every July, WWF had their own show.
Like annual event. Once a year,
pretty much.
Big show. And they'd often have these very kind of special matches that they could only put on in Japan, or they'd only do in Japan. Like, I mean, you put like Chris Jericho with like Cesaro, and they'd do 20 minutes or more, something that you wouldn't see on television.
When Chris Jericho wasn't even on TV in America, he still, joins the tour.
Right, something special for the Tokyo crowd. There was always something that you could only
like a different treatment for like people like a Finn Balor.
Yeah, the guys who had sort of a following in Japan already got some leeway.
And 1 year they had the main event, Triple H against Tajiri title match for the main event. Yeah, something like that.
It was always, it was made to be special.
Because it was basically house shows,
Mm-hmm. They put a couple on the WWE network. And then
stop in California, and then probably have a show in Hawaii, and come to Japan, and then go all the way down to like Australia, or the Singapore or something, it's like a part of the world tour. But we got to do a little history lesson here. Like we said, Giant Baba touring America 62 and 63 to 64, that he worked dates, the main event at the Madison Square Garden. Giant Baba against Antonino Rocker or young Bruno Sammartino, before it was WWF, and yes, the champion Bruno Sammartino toured Japan like 67, 68, wasn't really affiliated as WWF. He did, Bruno Sammartino did bring the WWF championship belt around, he wore that belt around his waist, but he wasn't defending WWF title in Japan. Instead, Bruno Sammartino challenged Giant Baba's international heavyweight title in Japan, which is interesting. Yeah. They did that a couple times. Yeah. But it wasn't WWF. It wasn't until 1974, Antonio Inoki signed a deal with senior Vince McMahon, 1974. The business partnership would last all the way till like 1985.
Right up until Hulk Hogan.
Even after WrestleMania 1. See, Hulk Hogan becomes WWF champion for the first time in January of 1984, right? By beating Iron Sheik. Everybody knows that. But even after that, he leaves America and come to New Japan and honor his tour, wearing black trunks with Ichiban on it, with silver wrestling boots, not like yellow boots and yellow trunks. And he still took the New Japan the schedules, all the way to like the fall of 1985. See, very first WrestleMania, I'm talking about Hulk Hogan, Mr. T against Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper, right? Mm-hmm. Even after that, he still toured Japan, New Japan. And there was a working relationship with this Vince McMahon and Inoki 84, 85. But Vince McMahon decided to pull all the WWF talent from Japan. Mm-hmm. And everybody but under the giant tent. That the Hulk Hogan, the Adrian Adonis, Bob Orton, the Paul Orndorff, all these WWF talent stopped coming to Japan at one point. It was different. But yes, between 1974 all the way to 1985, there was a working relationship with Antonio Inoki's New Japan Pro Wrestling and Vince McMahon Sr.'s WWF or WWF. And the champion who toured New Japan the most was Bob Backlund era. Yeah.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
That's right. He was sort of a regular face alongside Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, the Hulk Hogan came in. See, the Hulk Hogan actually had like a 2 runs with WWF. Initial run, 1979, 1980, 1981 run. It was the Hulk Hogan, the heel Hulk Hogan was the white trunks. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The cape?
It was Freddie Blassie. Yeah. That's how he came to Japan for the first time. Then made a tag team with Stan Hansen. Then still working for New Japan at the time. There was an instant hit that probably Antonio Inoki recognized something in young 28-year-old Hulk Hogan, something before Vince had a plan for national expansion. So pretty much the Hulk Hogan was a key person of the relationship too. And pretty soon, 80, 81, 83, Hulk Hogan was pretty much regular with New Japan. And
really
he
popular with the crowd.
Yeah. And he was dividing his time with AWA Minnesota, AWA, and half the year in Japan. He used to come with the Hulk Hogan, 81, 82, 83. He used to come to Japan like 5-6 tours a year, spending up to 15 weeks in Japan. That's a lot of tour.
Mm.
And tag team partner was Inoki. Then inaugural 1983 IWGP tournament. Final was Inoki against Hulk Hogan. You would think Inoki will beat Hulk Hogan to become the inaugural tournament winner of IWGP. Instead, Hulk Hogan beat Antonio Inoki and actually wore original IWGP, the black leather belt in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
So he was big, huge star before Hulk Hogan was big, huge star in Japan before he was national expansion superstar of WWE, WWF, I should say.
He was Ichiban Hulk Hogan.
Ichiban Hulk Hogan, right. But Ichiban actually was not his original line. That the word Ichiban was used by Dick Beyer, the Destroyer, in 70s.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
Ichiban meaning number one, yeah.
Mm. And he borrowed it, he put it on his tights. I think he put it on his boots.
Yeah. And also around that same time period, he was on Rocky 3 movie, right? So that made him even more famous because the Rocky 3 movie was big hit both in both America and in Japan.
That's right. He was Thunderlips.
Thunderlips. And he had one of the costumes he had in Japan had Thunderlips on it and on his back. One of the kimono jacket, he had like a Thunderlips written on it. So
he had a lot of momentum at around the early 80s time.
Yeah, big momentum, and also learned how to be like a super baby face by standing right next to Inoki and spend time with Inoki. You know, a lot of the things he does is so Inoki. Inoki's enzigiri to Hulk Hogan's big leg drop, big comeback with the 1-3 punch. That's Inoki
hulking
punch.
up. Yeah, it's Inoki.
That's so Inoki. Yeah, actually. So it's really funny to go back and watch videos that the way Inoki makes big comeback with his knuckle closed fist punch is so much like Hulk Hogan 3 years later.
And I recommend anybody go on to New Japan World if you have it and search for Hogan in New Japan when he was going against Abdul the Butcher. Because this was
82-ish, yeah,
maybe a little later, but it was the first. You could really see he was hulking up, but you could see where he got.
Yeah, he was right.
You could see him doing his own version of what Inoki would do when he's really fired up and ready to go.
And a little bit was taken from actually Baron von Raschke in AWA too.
Okay, I can see that. Sure.
Yeah. And so this is like when one wrestler becomes like a super huge superstar, you adapt portion of things from other past superstars, of course. And you can clearly see Antonio Inoki influence on early Hulk Hogan.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. And the 82 and 83, I believe, 81 and 82 then, the Inoki and Hulk Hogan won the tag team that championship. It was a Madison Square Garden Tag League in December, MSG League. Yeah. So that tells you the big relationship between WWF and New Japan Pro Wrestling at the time. Spring tournament, usually you have singles round robin tournament in spring in Japan, right? It was for a 5-year period. It was Madison Square Garden Series, and the November to December tag team tournament, round robin tournament was called Madison Square Garden Tag League Tournament. So it's like a Madison MSG here and MSG there. It's like a Madison Square Garden, the mecca of pro wrestling kind of thing, right? 1 year, Inoki and Bob Backlund teamed together. And following year, it was Inoki and Fujinami. But the third year, it was Inoki and Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan turned total babyface. Yeah. And I think the tournament final was against Killer Khan and Tiger Chun-Li. Typical heel, huh?
Oh, yeah. And Tiger Chun-Li, another person who would show up in WWF at that time.
Yeah, and then also during this between 1974 and 1985 working relationship, you not just Bob Backlund, but you had people like Pedro Morales, whomever had this program with Superstar Billy Graham, of course, or Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes through New York. And it's all the superstars you read on magazine from like a coverage of Madison Square Garden, that the once a month big spectacular, that the exact same superstar will come to New Japan like a couple months after that. We were so excited as a kid. And whomever challenged Bob Backlund at the time, you usually have 3 months program, right? First month, the big heel shows up, Madison Square Garden initial match, this big heel challenger, let's say like a Superfly Jimmy Snuka heel version, that he challenged Bob Backlund. The first month, he beat Bob Backlund count out or something, right? Then second month, you have double DQ, and then the third month, you have either cage match or the lumberjack match or the some third match programming that to settle the score kind of thing. Then somehow these heels, like a top challenger of Bob Backlund, kind of leaves the territory, right? Where did they go? They came to Japan.
But because there was no internet, TV didn't cover internationally, It was like they just disappeared.
Yeah, it's like because we have to remember there were territories, like the Bob Backlund's challenger come from Crockett's North Carolina territory or NWF Florida territory, or sometimes, come from Dallas, Texas, or from Midwest AWA, or there's a healthy independent territories. Those were, pretty, big territory when you see on the map. It covers a lot of areas. And there were a good 15 territories all the way till 1984, Vince McMahon's national expansion. And that Japan was almost like another territory that the American superstars can travel to.
Definitely. And some would stay longer than others. Some would pop up once or twice, and that was it.
Yeah, and of course, when Stan Hansen became huge, big rival of Antonio Inoki in 77, 78, 79, all the way to 80, that he had a big program, against Bruno Sammartino, another big program against Bob Backlund. So Stan Hansen initially came to New Japan as WWF superstar, but instead he stayed and signed a contract and became New Japan superstar. Then later on, in end of 1980, 81, starting January of 1982, that he became All Japan superstar at the time.
It was also around this time, more towards the mid 80s, 84, 85. This is when Hulk Hogan and Bruiser Brody just almost crossed paths in WWE New Japan.
Almost crossed paths. And I believe at the time, I asked, I had a lot of interviews with Brody at the time, and he was under the impression that he'll be working New Japan dates and WWF dates.
Like Hogan was.
Yeah. Yeah. But then again, a 1985 version of Hulk Hogan on national tour, that Bruiser Brody would become just another one of his challenger.
Mm-hmm. One of the
and probably
monthly monsters.
Yeah, like Bruiser Brody wouldn't be Bruiser Brody of Japan. That he would be just like Magnificent Morocco or Big John Studd, or you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he initially thought that he could take New Japan booking dates half the year, and half the year he would be working WWF, I should say. But that he pretty much found out that the treatment he'll get, that he'll be pinned by Hulk Hogan's leg drop 1, 2, 3 all over the country, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then that news or even videotape will come to Japan. That no good, Then I guess Bruiser Brody decided not to, do the business with WWF. And around the same time, it was Vincent Kennedy McMahon, that he wouldn't be sending any American talent to New Japan. It's like 1984, 1985 was the year that, if you remember, WWE had 3 crews, A team, B team, C team, 3 different towns, 3 different shows, house shows. And in 85 and 86, they were running some 900 house shows a year. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Crazy.
One show was Hulk Hogan, another show was Roddy Piper, and third show would be something like a Hacksaw Jim Duggan or something.
They always used to do that where I was growing up. When I grew up in the Albany, New York area, they would have one show.
They give you a C show?
There would be off. So they'd run MSG on the main day, like a Saturday or Friday night. And there would be a split of shows that would be split up between Poughkeepsie, Albany, and usually out west, like Syracuse, Rochester.
Still New York, but it's far enough.
But Hacksaw Duggan would headline one because he's from the area, and Ultimate Warrior would headline the other one, and Hogan would go to do Madison Square Garden. So it was always, it was set up like they were
like
just
3 shows, and
it was everywhere.
And that was before your pay-per-view technology. Even today's fans, think pay-per-view is like old-fashioned, right? No, it was like pay-per-view market. The universe wasn't all that big because you have to have the certain tuner at home. You have to have basic cable or satellite dish to even watch the regular show. Then to have pay-per-view, you still have to have that box at home. Then you can purchase it. And the universe wasn't even the pay-per-view universe I'm talking about wasn't even like millions and millions yet, And all the way to WrestleMania 3, they were still doing closed circuit feed too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is technology that changed wrestling too. But the WWE always would top of this technology thing when pay-per-view was becoming a thing. Yes, of course, pay-per-view becoming thing for WWE. And yeah, let's get back to this, that the business partnership with Japan. As of 85, see, even after WrestleMania 1, the Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, and Roddy Piper, and Paul Orndorff, and Jimmy Snuka's in corner, and then Ace Bob Orton in the other corner, and Muhammad Ali referee, that Liberace, the Yankees manager, Billy Martin, and all these people.
Cyndi
Even
Lauper.
after, of course, you never forget Cyndi Lauper. That pretty much was a renaissance of your Vince McMahon vision of professional wrestling, before he used the word sports entertainment yet. But that's when people think they stopped, Vince stopped sending wrestling, WWE supers to Japan. It maintained all the way till like end of 85. Hulk Hogan still toured all Japan after initial WrestleMania. People don't know about that. But the tag team tournament of 84, 84, because he was already champion, that he and Samu, the Wild Samoan, was tag team partner. He started the tour, and they ran an angle that Big Juice, the first tag team tournament, match that Hulk Hogan got bloodied up, and then he was injured, using my fingers.
Yeah. Quote unquote injured.
Yeah, injured, and Hulk Hogan had to leave the tournament early. So to forfeit all these tournament matches. Then that was the end of the regular Hulk Hogan. That Vince McMahon altogether stopped sending Hulk Hogan and other WWE superstars to New Japan Ring in end of 85. That was it.
Different era. It was a different era from then on.
Yeah, that's when New Japan signed the deal with world-class Von Erich people, and some signed the deal with Bill Watts. Before UWF, then it was like a Mid-South, right?
Sure.
And they had the Joe Daigo in Calgary that pretty much started like one by one, they discover new talent like a Konga the Barbarian, the Kokina, years before he was Yokozuna, or New Japan booked people like a Punisher Dice Morgan, who becomes Undertaker years later, and the real young Scott Hall, freelancing Bud Sawyer, of course Von Erichs, and all the new American face stars start coming to New Japan Ring. It was an interesting era. Of course, Owen Hart, new star from Calgary. And it was a time, 1984, Stu Hart sold his Stampede Wrestling to Vince McMahon, right? And in exchange, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy, these four wrestlers would sign with WWF. And you know this history. But Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith wanted to honor Japan schedule too. That they kept working WWE dates and New Japan, and they switched at the end of 83 to change affiliate to All Japan, but still took all the Japanese schedules, Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy. Yeah. But pretty soon, the Vince McMahon pulled them from All Japan too. That's when I guess Vince McMahon became kind of heel to Japanese audience, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he abandoned what they had going. Well, he had abandoned
and
what his father
Japanese
had going.
press, including myself then at the time, we didn't realize that there was never Vince McMahon Jr. on WWF television. Even when he was an announcer, doing the interviews and promos, that the writing, the tell-up appears on the screen. Vince McMahon, right? Never had Junior on it. But in Japanese press media, always referred him as Vince McMahon Jr. because of his father. He was a big figure.
His father was a known figurehead and would be at a lot of shows.
But the more than figurehead, because he actually signed the deal.
Sure,
with, Japanese wrestling, original JWA, Nippon Pro Wrestling. He sent Bruno Sammartino and other WWE superstar after their run in New York that would be sent. If you remember, Bruno Sammartino and Ray Stevens' big program in New York, right? Garage program, 65, 66, 67, somewhere. That Ray Stevens and Bruno Sammartino, after their feud in WWF, they would travel to Japan together and tour together. And not too many, American fans found out that Bruno Sammartino and Ray Stevens at the time, they tag teamed together in Japan.
Yeah.
It's like
you could live a different, you could totally
different universe. Yeah. But at the time, see, American Superstar only come to Japan maybe once or twice in lifetime, right?
Sure.
Not
it was special.
Yeah, very special. Bruno Sammartino altogether, probably in his 30-year career, only made 7 tours to Japan altogether. He did come back to Japan as a commentator, or he attended Giant Baba's memorial and all these things. But the Sammartino era, they didn't really have regular, appearance.
Yeah, it was only special occasions, big matches.
Yeah, therefore, see, in Japan, American Superstar meant like Abdullah the Butcher, the Taigajit Singh, those were regular in Superstar in Japan. Mel Maskers, of course,
Sheik.
Story and Terry Funk, Sheik, yeah. And of all people, like in New Japan's, the World League tournament final was Antonio Inoki against Killer Carl Krupp or somebody like that, Then Vince McMahon Sr. comes in the ring and give big trophy to Antonio Inoki in 1974 and announced that the New Japan and the WWF signed the partnership. That's when, Under the Giant started showing up regularly, because it was Vince McMahon Sr.'s idea that Under the Giant was always under Vince McMahon Sr.'s contract, pretty much exclusively. But Vince McMahon Sr. was so smart that you don't want to keep Under the Giant in one place that will wear out. It has to be like a special attraction. Therefore, Under the Giant was more like a Vince McMahon Sr.'s ambassador that goes to every single territory, right? In America, Australia, Mexico, Canada, even Europe. That every time Under the Giant make appearance, it'll be like a mega show for any territory. You do the heavyweight, super heavyweight battle royal or something, and work all over the place. And Under the Giant starts spending 10 to 15 weeks a year, every year, between 74 to 85. I mean, he was New Japan regular. Antonio Inoki against Under the Giant. I don't know how many times that happened. That was when Andre actually really wrestled, though. I mean, like a serious-looking single match against Antonio Inoki.
Andre had great matches around that time with Inoki, with Stan Hansen, Hogan.
Yeah. Well, the earlier Inoki single program. I mean, like a serious-looking single match. Like Inoki gives him short arm scissors, key lock, and that Andre picks Inoki the whole body up, and suplex and reverse suplex, each other. I mean, Inoki and Andre, I'm just suplexing each other, though.
Andre was much more mobile at the time.
And actually a good athlete. People don't know about it. Yeah.
I think he was maybe a little leaner or slimmer and able to move more
didn't
smoothly.
have bad back. Yeah.
But even still.
So that was like the partnership between Vince McMahon Sr. and Antonio Inoki in New Japan really worked. Yeah. And all these superstars from WWF, one after another, start showing up, have a single match program against Antonio Inoki. Of course, Antonio Inoki beat every single one of those WWF superstars, but it was good. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
All the way to people like Jesse Ventura, Adrian Adonis, Ken Patera, all these 80s superstars too. Yeah.
So if we fast forward a few years from Vince McMahon Jr. taking over, doing WrestleMania, so ultimately splitting the relationship between WWF and New Japan.
Yeah, and then also there was a thing, I believe it was 1979, that Antonio Inoki beat Bob Backlund in Tokushima to become WWF champion. If it was Giant Baba and Harley Race Harley Race dropping NWA title to Baba, but the end of the tour, about 2 weeks later, or even a week later, in one show, that the Baba will drop the NWA title back to Harley Race, so he goes home as a champion. Came in as champion, dropped the title for a week, and get the title back, and go home like nothing happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Tokushima, October of 1979, Inoki beats Bob Backlund to become very first Japanese wrestler to become to be WWF champion, right? And you would think he would drop the title back to Bob Backlund like a week later in Tokyo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Inoki didn't even do it. Instead, he forfeit the title. Yeah. And that the reason was that the Tiger Jeet Singh interfered the match and destroyed the title match. And saying was that Inoki did not want to have title in this way, and he's going to forfeit the title. So he never lost.
It's another thing that Hogan learned from Inoki.
Probably very political, but the maneuvering and also the good enough storyline that the people buy it,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Tiger Jeet Singh interfered the sacred title match, the big title from New York City, that the Madison Square Garden's World Championship belt. Inoki didn't want to have title that way. I hate Tiger Jeet Singh. How's that? And he forfeit the title though, but it gets even more complicated because in Japan, in Japan and the entire wrestling press media community, that they agree, go with the storyline that Inoki forfeit the title, right? So the title is vacant at the time, and he goes back to Madison Square Garden next month, in the Madison Square Garden, once a month show, that the title will be up for grab, and they will do Antonio Inoki against Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden, for the vacant WWE title. And when all the Japanese press, when they get there, it will find out that the Vince McMahon Sr. changed the lineup, okay? And it was Antonio Inoki defending his World Martial Arts title against Iron Sheik in one match, okay? Mm-hmm. And in Japan, the vacant title up for grab, Bob Backlund against Big Bad Bobby Duncan. Wow. And if you're sitting in the Madison Square Garden, it was announced Bob Backlund against Big Bad Bobby Duncan, Texas Death Match. Okay. And the people are not supposed to notice this, but Bob Backlund comes into the ring without belt in his waist. Texas Death Match to settle the score from the previous month. And Hisashi Shinma, Inoki's manager, but at the time WWF figurehead president, okay? He is holding brand new purple leather WWF belt and the Japanese photographer takes photos, right? That reporting that this is the title, that the vacant WWF title up for grabs. So, and then, sure enough, Bob Backlund beats Bobby Duncan and get the belt back. And in Japan, it was Inoki. Instead, they did the Antonio Inoki's World Martial Arts heavyweight title against Iron Sheik and somewhat undercard. Inoki, of course, beat Iron Sheik, and Bob Backlund beats Bobby Duncan to become WWF champion again. But Vince McMahon's eyes, that Antonio Inoki as a promoter, he double-crossed his father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he talked about it all the way to like year 2000. He double-crossed my father. Yeah. Did you know that?
No. So
yeah.
What are people's feelings on it now, if any?
I mean, who?
Anyone's. Like the general fan perception on it, especially Vin.
Oh, it was 1979, 40 years ago. You're not supposed to remember any of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Older fans, will say, still, like somewhat puzzled. Oh, we thought, they were going to have Antonio Inoki against Bob Backlund, a rematch at the Madison Square Garden. That never took place. Oh my gosh, and then Inoki instead defended his WWF martial arts title. And Bob Backlund had the title up for grab match against Big Bobby Duncan, and they got the title back. Oh, that was the end of the story. And then Inoki never challenged WWF title again after that.
Yeah, and in the States over here, it was always kind of positioned like the heavyweight title was never on the line, and they always talked about it as if it was the International Martial Arts Championship. And so there was always it was always unclear because you would read it in a magazine saying WWF World Title.
We have to remember it was decades before the internet, and Japanese press, who gathered, all kinds, Tokyo, not just Weekly Pro Wrestling, Weekly Gang, but the Tokyo Sports, the Nikkan Sports, the whatnot, Weekly Fight, all these, the newsstand sports pages and wrestling magazines that covered wrestling, they were all there. Ringside photographers, everything, reporters. But they pretty much agreed that, title rematch between Inoki and Babak ain't happening. And instead, Inoki defended his martial arts title. And they never even mentioned Texas Death Match between Bob Backlund and Bobby Dankam that they reported as title up for grab. And Bob Backlund won the title again. And then again, Bob Backlund the champion. See, it was like after a long program, like 77, 78, 79, Antonio Inoki in Japan challenged Bob Backlund for the title, 3 or 4 times. And if you know anything at all about 1978, 77, 78, 79 version of Antonio Inoki, it's like unbeatable, right?
I mean, those were the kind of golden years for that time for his career, too.
Yeah, and then Inoki challenging WWF title, and the champion is the 29, 30-year-old young Bob Backlund. And the first match they did was the 2 out of 3 fall match. So Inoki and Bob Backlund each had 1 fall, and they ran out of time and did the 60-minute Broadway. Whew, easy, right? And the second, third time, they had to be really creative to get out of it.
Sure.
Yeah. And then 4th title match, Inoki actually beat him to become champion on television, and he actually wore the WWE belt on TV, and then pretty much became the first WWF champion. I mean, first WWF Japanese WWF champion in history, and it's never been acknowledged in America.
It would never be acknowledged on TV. You could only find little asterisk notes about it in like a Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine or something, or Old Observer,
or some fanzine culture before the internet. Madison,
it was like lost results. Knowledge. It was like forbidden knowledge. You couldn't really know.
I think
exactly.
so. Yeah, but they all in all, they got out of it. Inoki won the WWF title in Japan. They forfeit the title because he wasn't happy about it. The Tiger Jitsu, interference and all these things. And Inoki never lost the title. And each superstar, Inoki and Bob Backlund, pretty much both, this like a face-saving thing, And Bob Backlund, after that, came to Japan a number of times, and he defended his WWF title against Fujinami. How's that?
That's right, while he was WWF champion.
Yeah, it wasn't Inoki anymore. That the Inoki's done with the program. It was now heavyweight Tatsumi Fujinami challenging very similar style Bob Backlund. Yeah. So they worked for everybody's win-win situation if you think about it. But 82, 83, when you look back, like hindsight, Bob Backlund's champion reign days are numbered.
Yeah. And, I got to say, just from my perspective, it's always seemed like Bob Backlund was a lot more popular as WWF champion in Japan than he was over in New York. I think so. I think in the big picture, kind of like when fans look back, especially, I think he was definitely more appreciated and well respected at that time. Whereas Bob Backlund wasn't Bruno.
Yeah, but when I watched Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden, my Christmas vacation of like 81, 82, I went to New York and attended Madison Square Garden show. And sure enough, it was weird because there was still like not a curfew, but the Madison Square Garden show lasted till like 11 o'clock at night. And Bob Backlund as a champion, they come in like a 5th match of this night, and people start leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the reception and the huge, when he came in, it was like a huge pop though. Still, yeah.
I think he was well liked. I think that in the big picture, that people don't tend to remember those moments. They tend to look at it and compare it to guys like Bruno and Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and they look at it in that kind of retrospective big picture sort of way.
Yeah, but in reality, Bob Backlund had his 5 years and 10-month reign. That's a long reign.
That's a long reign. It's not. It was one of the last long reigns.
78 to December of '83 until he was beaten by Iron Sheik. It was the end of an era, obviously, but he carried Madison Square Garden for 5 years. Yeah, but then again, it was before national expansion in 1984 that. Beginning of WrestleMania era, or I should say a sports entertainment era, huh? When WrestleMania was, the first inaugural WrestleMania happened, people were calling it a renaissance of pro wrestling, right? It changed, yeah. And what took place before the year 1984 almost didn't count.
Right.
It
was like a reset.
Yeah, I think so. And actually, you see, a lot of people still believe Vince McMahon's national expansion and the whole conquer the world thing started in 1984, right? But actually, Vincent Kennedy McMahon bought the company from his father June of 1982. Actually, I mean, people didn't really acknowledge that then. It was like, Vince McMahon Sr. was, like 67 years old and was ready to retire. And he actually sold the company, didn't give that to him. That Vince McMahon, not as expensive as people would assume, he was around $350,000. I mean, that's a lot of money then.
Isn't there a hockey team involved in that sale too? Am I crazy?
The Capital Wrestling Corporation.
Yeah.
Probably, or a minor league baseball team or something people talk about.
I think there was some, like, it was the WWF, but it was also another property of the McMahons.
Yeah, let's put it this way, that Vince McMahon Sr. had other assets. Let's put it that way.
Right. That's right.
And also, Vince McMahon Sr. at the time of this June of 1982, he wasn't the only stockholder. There was a Phil Zacco and the Bob Morella, Gorilla Monsoon, of course, and Arnold Skaaland.
Manager Bob Backlund.
Yeah, and also a big time, like a big shot in the backstage area,
Yeah.
And Arnold, the young Vince McMahon bought stock of Capital Sport Corporation from the father and the Bob Morella and Arnold Skaaland and Phil Zacco, Philadelphia promoter. Then actually promised father that classy Freddie Blassie would be hired for life. Something like that.
There were a couple of those deals, right? Like a couple of guys were grandfathered in.
Yeah, right. You gotta keep these people.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah. Then changed his company title from Capital Wrestling Corporation to Titan Sports, if you remember Titan Sports. Yeah. Then they moved the office from New York City to Greenwich, Connecticut. Before they moved to Stanford, it was Greenwich, Connecticut. That they moved I guess that the Connecticut had the lower tax rate than the New York City or something.
And Greenwich is very close to New York City. Right.
So it was the beginning of Titan Sports, and it was people still believe that it was almost like a myth that the year 1984, the whole big national expansion started. Of course, it started, but as early as summer of 82 and 83, the Vincent Kennedy McMahon were running WWF show in places like Los Angeles and San Jose in California. Yeah. And it's kind of like rehearsing his national expansion. Then started signing all the big talent from other territories, stole all the talent from AWA, of course, and made other NWA smaller territories, skeleton, like Paul Orndorff was a huge star in Atlanta before WWF, Mr. Wonderful. Roddy Piper was a big, huge star with Crockett, remember?
Yeah.
And was also on
And in Portland.
And then WTBS too, that Saturday Night TV, and had something similar to Piper's Pit already.
Yeah.
And also Vince McMahon bought St. Louis, that the capital of National Wrestling Alliance.
Yeah.
So,
didn't Larry Madison work for that?
Yeah,
segment?
Because he was pushed out of the Central States or the NWA capital by wrestler promoters like Bob Geigel, that Hardy Race, that of all people, Vern Gagne, that or Pat O'Connor, that they had to be former wrestler to be involved in wrestling promotion, right? And Larry Madison works directly under Sam Machinik, who was retiring at the time. And Larry Madison himself ran his own Greater St. Louis Wrestling, using Bruiser Brody as top talent. So there was 2 wrestling offices in St. Louis for a time being, like 1983. But those are another subject for another day. But the one by one, Vince McMahon started buying or start stealing, signing talents away from other companies. And he was going to buy AWA, and Vern wouldn't sell it. Instead, Vince McMahon decided to take all the talent from AWA. At the time, Hulk Hogan, of course, but the Adrian Adonis, just their own Rick Martel, or people like Jim Brunzell, or even Crusher and Mad Dog, like seniors.
Or even Gene Okerlund.
Gene Okerlund, the most famous, that the TV announcer of AWA, he just switched sides,
Bobby Heenan.
Bobby Heenan, of course, it was a big thing, for a big blow for the, AWA, of course.
All the stars.
All the stars with the same, and Dr. D. David Schultz at the time, the Hulk Hogan's opponent. Then the same crew came to Bloomington, Minnesota, and ran their own WWF show. Oh my gosh! Yeah, that was a
different name.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the end for AWA. Yeah, and people in Minnesota at the time I was there, afraid that are they going to really take over? No, AWA is too strong. Vern Gagne fought this war until the 89, 90. I mean, gotten smaller and smaller, but at the same time, Vern Gagne decided to keep up with the time and sign the deal with like ESPN. If you remember the Las Vegas TV taping, ESPN, AWA was on national television for a while, and also they did the thing like Pro Wrestling USA. Like 5-6 different
combination of different
6 different company worked together to counter WWE, and they went into Meadowlands instead of Madison Square Garden, and they fought good fight. But Vince McMahon's vision was way the vision was strong, I think. And so that's the Vince McMahon of 1984. At the same time that Vince decided to pull all his WWE superstars from New Japan. That's what we're talking about today. Up until 84, that New Japan series tours were filled with WWF superstars, Andre the Giant, younger Hulk Hogan, Bob Backlund still made tours, Don Morocco, Paul Orndorff, Brian Blair, Adrian Adonis, of course, and Dick Murdoch. Dick Murdoch was a little bit interesting case because he was working with New Japan all along, but he started working to take in WWF dates as a tag team partner of Adrian Adonis. They even got the tag team title, if you remember. Yeah. But some wrestlers like Dick Murdoch wanted to have both, wanted to work both places. He could take WWF schedules, but he will still want to honor Japan dates at the same time. But Vince wouldn't let him, right? And a lot of wrestlers, the New Japan had to change all the American members, like American roster. And I was there. It's like, wow, it's no more Hulk Hogan. Andre still came in, but they still need to create other American, newer American superstars in Japan. Yeah. It was good that the Brody himself, switched from All Japan to New Japan in 1985. In 1985 alone, that was WrestleMania year, right? 1985 alone, Bruiser Brody and Antonio Inoki had like a 7 single match series. It was a big thing.
It was very big, yeah.
Yeah. So Inoki managed to have all these big tour and the big shows without WWF superstars. That's what I'm trying to get to.
There was a balance still.
Yeah, it didn't have to be WWF, And WWF, I should say, that didn't really have television, local television in Japan. And now that the fast forward a little bit, about 5 years, there was Nichibei Wrestling Summit, 1990, Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, this was the
WWF,
the next part. Yeah.
Yeah, WWF and All Japan and New Japan, 3 major companies worked together to produce big, huge Tokyo Dome show, right? That was the year, actually, Vince McMahon took Japanese market a little bit more seriously. See, Tokyo Dome Wrestling Summit was April of 1990, right? Vince came to Japan January and March and April. So he made 3 trips in 4 months period to put this pieces together. That's how serious.
Yeah, that's very serious.
Yeah, the first trip, I believe, sorry if I was wrong, but the first trip for Vince to come to Japan was 1983. Actually, he signed Hulk Hogan's exclusive deal in Japanese hotel in 83.
Oh.
Yeah, because still not under contract, but he wanted to sign Hulk Hogan when nobody was watching, right? So,
I see.
Yeah, so Hulk Hogan was having his regular tour with New Japan 83, and Vince McMahon flew himself to Japan, and he signed Hulk Hogan right in Japan. In 84, he came back again and pulled Hulk Hogan from the tournament. At the same time, he had the meeting with All Japan, Baba. So that he was talking to both sides, in 1984. He would be talking to Inoki, but he wants to have another meeting with Giant Baba in the Capitol Hotel in Tokyo. Interesting, huh? Capitol Tokyo Hotel. But yeah, Vince McMahon, because his leverage was that the Vince McMahon would let Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy will work all the Japan date. And we might, Giant Baba, All Japan, and Vince McMahon could have partnership that point forward. For some reason, that didn't work out, and never really, All Japan, Giant Baba didn't really have WWE talent or anything, but Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid. But pretty soon, that they were pulled from from All Japan tour too, and that was around the time that Dynamite Kid start hurting. It was 1981, 1982 Dynamite Kid anymore. I mean, his body and what he did in the ring, he wasn't the same. But yeah, Vince McMahon did come back to Japan in 84 and had a meeting with Giant Baba too. But let's fast forward. 1990, January, March, and April. He made 3 trips to Japan in 4 months period. That's how serious Vince McMahon was about this wrestling summit, Tokyo Dome. It's like it's like 3 different promoters, 3 different agenda though. That Baba decided to help this wrestling summit. It wasn't initially Giant Baba's idea to run Tokyo Dome. It was, New Japan did that, but Tokyo Dome wasn't. I mean, Tokyo Dome, for the record, Tokyo Dome opened for baseball in 1988. And there was like a Mike Tyson Buster Douglas fight in 89, if you remember.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and 1990 was the year that Inoki's New Japan started having regular, not so regular, but like a twice or so Tokyo Dome show, right? And Baba didn't think Tokyo Dome was good for wrestling, and the Budokan was a perfect size, like Madison Square Garden.
Sure.
But Vince McMahon was going to come to Japan on his own, I mean, sooner or later, to run WWE show in Japan on their own. But at the time, Vince McMahon was still testing like a water that should he work with local promoter, right? And he wouldn't talk to Inoki. But Inoki, by 1990, he was a politician. He was not with wrestling. And Vince McMahon went straight to Giant Baba. Let's have a show together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently didn't think that Vince McMahon could run all Americans, WWF Superstar show at the Tokyo Dome. He even felt that he needed some local talents, or the All Japan or New Japan to work, like a local, help. And it was Giant Baba's idea was that this Vince McMahon would come to Japan on his own sooner or later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's work this Tokyo Dome match to prevent them from coming in on their own.
Mm.
And new president of New Japan Pro Wrestling after Inoki left, it was Seiji Sakaguchi. See, if it was Inoki, Baba and Inoki wouldn't sit on the same table, right?
Right.
But if it was Seiji Sakaguchi, Baba would always willing to sit down and have a cup of coffee with him.
Mm.
They were friends, initially from Nippon Pro Wrestling.
Right.
And now that the president of New Japan was Seiji Sakaguchi, and the Baba and Sakaguchi shook hands and let's work this Tokyo Dome Wrestling Summit show with WWE, and they wouldn't come to Japanese market on their own. We prevent that. So the main event was, yes, Hulk Hogan against Stan Hansen. Initially, it was Hulk Hogan against Terry Gordy. That was Terry Gordy that the Baba was going to feed Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan has to go over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Terry Gordy, looked at the situation and said, I ain't doing it. I mean, this is like his home territory. He worked 20 weeks
at that time.
year. Yeah, and then why would I, have a main event is fine, but single match against Hulk Hogan and going down, and then why would I do it, right? Then pretty much Terry Gordy quickly declined, and Giant Baba had to make a couple phone calls because Stan Hansen was already in Japan, but the Baba didn't even know where to get a hold of him. He was living in Kawasaki or somewhere, But anyhow, Stan Hansen said, right, I'll do it. And he knew the way, it's so smart that Stan Hansen and Hulk Hogan would have the spectacular single match, and Hulk Hogan would be beating Stan Hansen, but at the end of the night, both guys will shine. You know what I mean? That with this Ox Bomber, that Hulk Hogan did beat Stan Hansen at the Tokyo Dome main event. But after that, it didn't hurt Stan Hansen one bit. Yeah, it was interesting. I learned something. Yeah.
Why don't you think it hurt Stan Hansen ultimately? Why didn't
he?
Yeah, because it didn't seem like that. It didn't seem like it was effective. He went right back to his usual Japan tour, and that was it.
The monster heel and the main guy. Yeah. The way they put together a match, and also like the elements were that Stan Hansen didn't use his signature, the Western lariat. See, if he used the lariat, you would have to have Hulk Hogan kick out at the counter too, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might as well not use it. Instead, very similar looking Ox Bomber, the right arm lariat, the Hulk Hogan used as a finish in Japan. It wasn't a big signature leg drop in America. That's American finish. It was like Hulk Hogan's and Stan Hansen doing pretty much Japanese match in content, and Stan Hansen, okay, let's put it that way, didn't have a chance to use his signature Western lariat. Hulk Hogan instead used his Ox Bomber clothesline and pinned his real quick 1, 2, 3. And just as soon as Stan Hansen get pinned 1, 2, 3, he gets up and start brawling. Oh my God, rah, 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 and then it's like people probably almost forgot the finish.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And the match was good. That they teased double count out 3 times. Like when you start fighting outside the ring, you start kind of like smelling the double count out finish coming, right?
Right. Yeah, you're anticipating.
Very disappointing, right?
Yeah.
Instead, they went back to ring. Then people clapped. Oh, good, good, good. The fight continues. Then second time, they went outside the ring and they start fighting outside the guardrail to the table, broadcasting table, all over the Tokyo Dome floor. And people will think, oh, double count out finish coming, right? Then they went went back to the ring for the second time. Then third, they did a couple, 3 times. So people were kind of almost satisfied. They didn't give you double count out disappointing finish. It was a clean finish. Stan Hansen lost the match, but at least they give you clean finish that people happy about it.
Yeah. Fair trade, I suppose. Because you're not going to get a clean finish.
And also it was like an all-star. Yeah, it was an all-star card that the initial meeting of Macho Man Randy Savage against Genichiro Tenryu with Sherry Martel in Macho Man's corner.
I think one of the best of all time.
Yeah, it's like a chemistry. Right? Yeah,
they were perfect. They were perfect for each other.
Yeah, it's like either it'll be super good or super bad, huh?
It was super good, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Sherry Martel was amazing in that too.
And also female manager outside the ring interfering matches that way. It was pretty new for Japanese fans in 1990.
She was the best example to do it. She was the best to demonstrate that.
Yeah, and each guys, the Tenryu, Macho Man Randy Savage, they did all the signature moves and had a great match. Very satisfying, right? And Giant Baba and Under the Giant made a tag team for the first time, like 2 giants, right? And going up against Demolition. And it's like, wow, yeah, it's like, you already read it, Of course, somebody's going to beat Demolition Smash. But yeah, it was like Under the Giant and Giant Baba teaming up for the first time. 2 giants in the ring. And Demolition, perfect opponent, right? Yeah. And New Japan did provide 2 matches. Liger against Akira Nogami, right? And it was Masa Saito Hashimoto against Riki Choshu and Chono or something like that. It's like something you can watch in New Japan Ring. Didn't really blend or mingle with WWE Superstar. That was New Japan's choice.
They just
initially they were so they co-promoted. Initially they were announcing matches like the Riki Choshu, the Greg Valentine, the Rick Martel, Mr. Perfect, or such that they were gonna mix with New Japan wrestler, but they didn't do it. New Japan brought their own 2 matches: Liger against Akira Nogami and Masa Saito, Riki Choshu, Chono Hashimoto in it. And you're not supposed to remember the content almost, because I don't remember what happened, But yeah, they did that. But the New Japan did work. And also there was downside was that Ted DiBiase as a $1 Million Man challenged Ultimate Warrior's WWF title. And they did the exact WWF match. Wasn't squash, but it only like 7-minute match that the Ultimate Warrior beat Ted DiBiase clean. But Ted DiBiase in Japan was a huge superstar, 3 years earlier, with Stan Hansen's partner.
Tag team partner, yeah.
And then also Terry Funk's sidekick when he was young. And he had regular tour all through the end of 70s into early part of 80s, all the way to like 87,
Great matches with DiBiase and All Japan. Ton.
Yeah, DiBiase and Dickie Slater, Terry Funk, and going up against somebody like Stan Hansen. Then Ted DiBiase turned on Terry Funk and turned heel and became Stan Hansen's regular partner after Brody left. He was a huge star, but that the costume would tell you everything. That Ted DiBiase comes in with a $1 Million Man costume, and he's a $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and did the WWF match. So Japanese wrestling fans, like a live crowd, understood, right? This is WWF match, the WWF show. And that was the only thing. And also that I cannot confirm it, but from what I gathered, that like 2 or 3 weeks earlier, right? WrestleMania 6 took place. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, beat Hulk Hogan to become WWF champion. So at the Tokyo Dome, WWF champion was Ultimate Warrior, but he was not on the main event. He defended his WWF title against Million Dollar Man Ted DiBiase, but it was like a third or fourth from top. The main event was still not non-champion, but the Hulk Hogan against Stan Hansen. That's like an ultimate, like an automatic main event in Japan.
So do you think it made the WWF title mean less?
Actually, it was more complicated because I don't think Vince McMahon told Giant Baba beforehand that Hulk Hogan wouldn't be coming in as champion.
I see. I see.
Yeah, Japanese promoter side always assumed that the Hulk Hogan would be at the Tokyo Dome as WWF champion. No question about it, right?
Yeah.
You would think. And Baba didn't really know, or Vince McMahon himself didn't tell Giant Baba that Hogan would be dropping the title 2 weeks earlier. That would probably change some things too. That Baba probably didn't trust him or something. Yeah.
There must have been something.
Yeah. But Vince McMahon did what he would do, and Giant Baba would react the way he would react, and New Japan did what they had to do. Does that sound like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
the Wrestling Summit took place 1990, April. The only Wrestling Summit they had. They were going to do it again, but they never happened. Wrestling Summit just happened once. Summit, like a G7. All the president and prime minister from every major countries gather for the conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a summit, so they call it Wrestling Summit at the Tokyo Dome. WWF, New Japan, and All Japan all worked together for the first time and the last time. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, and that was pretty much the end of the WWF in the mainstream Japanese scene until the 2000s.
Actually, WWF had their own tour in 1994, infamous Mania Tour.
This was with Randy Savage and
on their own. 4 shows: Yokohama Arena, Osaka, Hiroshima, and Sapporo. All big city, big arena. And actually, the roster was great. Champion Bret Hart, Undertaker was in it. Yokozuna, Undertaker. Bret Hart, Macho Man Randy Savage, Yokozuna, Undertaker, Alundra Blaze, Bam Bam Bigelow, Bob Backlund, Smoking Guns, the Head Shrinkers, to Doink, to 1 2 3 Kid. Pretty much healthy, big, your A-team tour.
Yeah, like the best of the in-ring guys, for sure.
Yeah, and then minus Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan wasn't working there at the time, 94. I'm sure that he was with WCW by then. That Bret Hart as champion, Undertaker in it, Yokozuna in it, but Macho Man Randy Savage still working WWF. That was superstar package, and they did not draw. Yokohama Arena, 18,000 capacity, and they had the 4,000, 5,000 tops. Sapporo, like empty Sapporo. The Hiroshima, Osaka. It's like I don't think Japanese audience at the time were ready for all WWE superstar show. And in 1994, there was no TV, that the satellite TV, that the regular TV, that the Japanese fan can watch WWE programming. All they had was the VHS Coliseum video series. Do you remember Coliseum video?
Oh, well, of course. That was, because when you had TV at home, like if you didn't tape it, if you missed the show, you missed the show. That was it. So the only other way to watch it, other than going to live, was renting those Coliseum home videos at Blockbuster Video. Oh, yeah. Extra size box.
Not be all brag about it. But
you were on those.
Yeah, WrestleMania through WrestleMania 1 through WrestleMania 9 and all the initial Survivor Series and SummerSlam and Royal Rumble and all that. I did the Japanese voiceover.
That's right. So if anybody can get their hands on those, Fumi's voice.
It only exists in WCW. The VHS tape. It's still at my house because that's VHS format. That if my last VCR breaks, that's it. I can't watch it ever again.
Uh-oh. We have to preserve these.
VH tape still exists at my house. But I did WrestleMania 1 through WrestleMania 9 with my voiceover on it.
Wow, I'll have to
but
check
I'm not bragging about it because it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the most popular tape. It was more of a UWF era, if you remember.
Right. I mean, 94, excuse me, 94 was not the best year to come in and try to make a mark in Japan, because that's, I think, maybe when Japanese wrestling was around its biggest and at its peak with between
and then
All
UWF,
Japan,
break into three groups: Akira Maeda's Rings, Nobuhiko Takada's UWFI, Fujiwara's Fujiwara Gumi, and then the break off and the Pancras was created. And at the same time, in the other side of extreme, the spectrum, Atsushi Onita's FMW doing extreme death matches, and FMW's spin-off like IWA Japan and the Wing, they're doing all the deathmatch series. In 95, there was, Cactus Jacks and Terry Funk's, the deathmatch tournament at the Jingu Stadium, you remember? That was the era. The WWF came in on their own, like years too early, huh?
wasn't the best time, and that's putting it mildly. It was just,
but they didn't know why though.
Right. Well, it was an oversaturated market at the time. I mean, there were a lot of people going to shows, and it's just American pro wrestling was not what people were interested in at the time.
And also, I have to admit, Japanese wrestling fans were very, very biased that Japanese wrestling were better than American wrestling or something.
Sure. I mean, it was arguable because at the time, if you're looking at it financially, New Japan was making a lot more money than WWF was in the 90s. So if you look at it from the big picture, but it was hard to look at it from the big picture at that time, because the internet wasn't as prevalent.
26 years later, we're sitting here talking about it. We can be pretty objective about it, right?
Much more so than 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And also, I was making all these color pages on Weekly Pro Wrestling Magazine. Every week, I was putting American pages that they go like, why do you take up all these pages for this American stuff nobody's reading? Ooh, oh my gosh, Yeah, I had to fight it, to get my pages, And I mean, 3 or 4 pages for WWF coverage, and 3 more pages for WCW, NWA coverage, and I wanted to have 3 more pages for ECW pages too, and some American independent scene too. Give me pages, right? But they weren't really favorable, it's like we could only give you the so many pages for American stuff because we have FMW shows, And 94 was also All Japan women's, and the inner promotions boom period.
Oh my God! I mean, it was just a peak time for so many different genres of wrestling.
Every week, we were producing 160-page wrestling magazine every week, 5-day turnaround. 160 pages wrestling magazine every week, but it was still hard to get American stuff in,
It was I guess it was a great time for Japanese wrestling. It's the same on this side too. There was more interest in domestic product. People were interested in what they wanted. It was like years before when people were more interested in who was the champ in their territory. It grew because technology grew with television
and better products. Production-wise,
everything.
Then there was a pay-per-view, then satellite channel, then the internet doesn't come to your everyday life until like 98. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was the people with Apple computers, but the people weren't sending emails to each other until like Windows 85, 88. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Windows 95, I think.
95, 98, right. My first one was like Windows 98.
Yeah.
Because I didn't believe everybody and anybody and every single person would have a computer. I didn't believe that. But now it's hindsight. That now it's like not even laptop; it's a smartphone, right? iPhone does everything.
That's right,
and
it's different.
And also that the moving image and the actual moving image of in the internet doesn't start till like 2005-ish, right?
Right. It wasn't easy. You could download things for a long time, but it wasn't until...
Oh, the sending, just a still photo was like a space taking.
I know. It was horrible.
Yeah. So that it did grow with technology, and with satellite channels, Sky Perfect TV and CS, that communication satellite, all these, multi-channel television, that the Japanese market was ready for American wrestling too by 1998. Yeah. So we lived through it though, right?
Yeah. And from 98, 99 into the Attitude Era, That's when WWE really carved out its niche and became WWE that is known
in 2002 on. 2002, 2001. I believe it was 2002 at the Yokohama Arena that Rock and the undisputed WWF and WCW champion Chris Jericho, they came to Japan and started having this, their own WWF tour every year after 2002, every year. But Vince McMahon never came with them. One year he was going to come, okay? But he broke his hip or something walking to Royal Rumble.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that year?
Quads or something?
Yeah. If he didn't break his bone, walking to Royal Rumble, he was going to come to Japan and does the Vince McMahon thing in Japanese ring. And that never happened. And since then, Vince McMahon hasn't been to Japan.
So who would be in charge of those tours, like liaison?
Oh, the agents, like people like Blackjack Lanza or somebody like Arnold Skolan, of course, Mr. Fuji, or the agents, Pat Patterson, probably somebody like that. Yeah, maybe not Pat Patterson, but they were agents. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, house show agents they call it. Then later on they renamed it as producers.
Sure.
But today's WWE producer is rather young, right? Younger. The Adam Pearce doing an authority figure that the people like Jamie Noble, all these younger people, younger than this generation, they're in charge. Yeah. Not even Michael Hayes anymore. Remember? Arn Anderson, those people, Ricky Steamboat, they're in charge, between year 2000 to 2010, 15. Yeah. But now producers are a little younger with WWE too.
Yeah, I don't know the
I
don't know the structure over there exactly. Generally, it seems like it's younger and a wider circle than in Japan.
Right. And when when WWF has tour in Japan, it's another house show that happens to be in Tokyo. How's that?
I see. I get that.
Okay, did we cover enough?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
But if anybody has questions, we can.
There has always been relationship, whether it's the partnership between Vincent James McMahon and Antonio Inoki, 1974 to 1984, then Vince McMahon in Japan, Vince McMahon Jr. Huh? But
right.
They cut that off too. But now he's only Vince McMahon and no Jr. But the Vincent Kennedy McMahon era begins, and the relationship with the Japanese market drastically changed, and Vince McMahon would do Vince McMahon way of things, right? And Japanese market, local market, domestic market have countered, and it's always been political. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if there's something that we missed or there's a topic that we didn't touch on, we can.
But with Triple H, I think Triple H in charge. Oh, I should add that Stephanie McMahon has been to Japan three times in between. Yeah. And Shane McMahon's been here too. And Triple H, even not working in the ring, he's been to Japan three times. Remember, like a couple years ago, Triple H came to Japan trying to buy Stardom?
That's right. I think it was around that time he signed Sorry.
Yeah. And the William Regal was a big part of that too. Now it's AEW, but William Regal knows Japanese market a little bit better than Triple H maybe, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And those people. And the Triple H had this vision that the NXT Japan could work. That hasn't happened yet. Maybe he might do that again. I don't know. But the
NXT pandemic Japan changed a lot of plans.
Yeah, right. But the NXT Japan, can you imagine?
I can't really, because I don't know if it would run out of Japan or would it run somewhere else, or would it be better to start something like NXT Asia, where it could be Japan and other countries?
Or what they thought in the NXT Japan would be in Japan, and what Triple H thought NXT Japan would be was two different pictures. It was more like Triple H sending American rookies to Japanese dojo system and film everything until he debuts, like a make documentary. That's NXT Japan. Whereas Japanese local independent company thought that the NXT Japan will have dojo, American dojo in Japan, and they want to join. You know what I'm saying?
I see.
The people had different vision of things. NXT Japan meant something in Japan, right? But for Triple H's vision, it was like a doing Japanese dojo system with American interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm almost hoping that they will do it again.
Well, things are different now. Who knows? I mean, it really depends first on the boundaries opening up internationally and the visa situation between Japan and the US. I think once that's completely...
Yeah, but interestingly enough, this COVID-19 situation stopped everything as of 2020,
Yeah, there seemed to be plans, and then I think they pulled the office out of Japan, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. But then again, it was not like, walking away from Japanese market. The Singapore and Shanghai, China became bigger market or the marketing place for WWE. Not with wrestling people, but the WWE's marketing division people. Different kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
They're not wrestling people. It's more like marketing, selling merch all over the world kind of thing.
Yeah, different approach.
And copyright things, you know what I'm saying? Like licensing their goods, all over the world. Yeah. So sometimes WWE is like run by wrestling people, and a lot of times it's like more like a corporate, Yeah. I'm hoping that
it's so big, so it has to be a kind of
right
balance between the two.
Yeah, because today's, co-CEO of WWE, Nick Khan, is not exactly a wrestling person.
Mm-hmm, but he's more of a sports person. And he has a different kind of background, so maybe we'll see a different approach.
I'm hoping that with Triple H be in charge of all creative and have better understanding about Japanese market and Japanese wrestling, and I'm hoping that he'll open up the friendly relationship once again.
Could be.
I mean, win-win for both sides. That's business, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. We were talking top of our head, but I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, so I think we covered the McMahon's relationship to Japan and WWF's relationship to Japan. All the
Vincent James McMahon to Vincent Kennedy McMahon to now Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Yeah,
and don't call him Junior. Don't forget that.
yeah. But I'm just WWF should come back here. The fans waiting. Yeah.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Maybe 2 years, 3 years?
Since summer of 2019.
Yeah.
The pandemic starts 2020, right?
Yep.
So, it was some of 2019 then, right? So they haven't been here 3 years. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll be there soon. I don't know when, but...
In the meantime, something like DAZN, that live streaming internet television thing, they had the live WWE programming.
That's right. In Japan, they did. Yeah. Over in the North America, they don't. They carry more boxing.
Oh, the zone. Yeah, because it's a UK company.
Company.
That was the last time I did the live voiceover.
Right. The contract ended with J Sports. I think. Beginning of the year. So.
And no WWE on TV, and I've been watching WWE Raw and SmackDown on YouTube 1 day late.
Yeah. That's the situation at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, open the market, please. But actually, the cable TV and the J Sports people told me that their contract money, the annual fee, skyrocketed.
I see.
Yeah, so WWE became very expensive product for Japanese market.
Yeah, and I wonder what will happen going forward if ownership changes in that, like if it's sold.
Yeah, because we can compare that with UFC. UFC is also expensive if you have like a licensing contract and stuff like that. But UFC treats Japanese market a little bit differently, and they created a secondary fighting channel for Japanese market.
Did they like a UFC Fight Pass sort of thing, or?
Yeah, and a little package for Japanese market only. Yeah.
Well, I think the people at UFC completely understand the
market
business of MMA. They understand where it came from, and they understand how it came up in Japan. And I think it has to be tailored to Japan, especially just because it's a different. It's not a completely different approach, but it's really smart to think like that, like localizing it.
Yeah,
localizing
and
it.
also wrestling business or sport business for that matter is not completely independent from what's happening in the real world and the real economy out there.
Mm-hmm.
US economy is so much stronger than Japanese economy right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that has a lot to do with it too.
It's all very interesting. Well, I want to see what happens going forward. So we'll just kind of keep our eye on
and
the story.
a lot to do with pandemic right now too.
Yeah. Pandemic ending,
the pause, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe some of the plans that we were just talking about, maybe we'll start to see, I don't know, some kind of momentum coming some way between WWE and another company. Who knows?
Yeah. And the WWE will have run their live show again in Japan.
That's probably what will happen first. And I think what will happen, hopefully maybe next year, I imagine, if everything runs smoothly. I can't say. I don't know if it will, but we'll see. It depends on what happens. But if we missed anything, you can reach out to us. If people have questions for you, Fumi, how can they ask?
On Twitter, at Fumihiko Fumihikodayo, at Fumihikodayo on Twitter, or just Fumi Saito on Facebook. Message me first.
And on Twitter, I'm at Justin M. Knipper, Knipper. Reach out to us if you have questions or comments. Otherwise, until next week, Fumi, take it away.
So long from Tokyo.
Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then, drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.
Life is what you make it. So what are you making? Healthier choices? New friends? New beginnings. Whatever you're making in life, make it matter together with LA Care Health Plan. Healthcare starts at $0.